So this is something that I've kept completely to myself, save for a confused phone call to my best friend the morning after, to try and figure out if what I thought happened actually happened. Truthfully, the event that incited this incident was my fault, and also rather stupid. So I think I've been too embarrassed or mad at myself to share the story. However, if me sharing keeps somebody from making the same set of mistakes, I think I need to swallow my pride. I had only been living in New Orleans for about 2-ish weeks the night that this occurred, and while I'd never been to New Orleans once in my life prior to moving there, I'm from a similarly large metro area in the American South, so I'm familiar with the dynamic of a city like this. One minute, you'll see kids playing catch in the streets and young couples walking arm in arm down tropically adorned sidewalks. And the next moment, dilapidated houses, gang violence, young men posted up on street corners, and unimaginable poverty tied to rampant drug abuse. In the end, it's just all about knowing where to go and which areas to avoid entirely. Anyway, I was driving home from running some obscure errand at night around 9:30 p.m. that caused me to drive through St. Claude. For anyone that doesn't know, this is certainly one of those neighborhoods that should be avoided, if at all possible. As I came upon a stop sign right next to a small community center/food bank, I suddenly slammed on the brakes due to driver's instinct, before really even understanding why I did it. Standing there, just feet away from my front bumper, was a teeny tiny cat. Its wide eyes staring back at me in terror as it became briefly blinded by my headlights. This is where my own stupidity comes into play. I didn't really know where I was and how dangerous of an area that it happened to be, and without even thinking for a single damn moment, I stepped outside of the car to assess the situation, maybe see if I could help the little guy. I didn't even remove my keys from the ignition, as I figured I'd only be there for a moment. Didn't think to grab my phone from the charger. I figured I'd either be able to beckon over the little cat and help it, or watch it dart away before slipping back into the car and continuing my journey home. What I didn't realize when I knelt down on the pavement was that my clumsy self was too close to the barely open car door, and when I stood up, I bumped it, and it immediately swung shut. No big deal, I thought, convincing myself that the door would be unlocked, only to feel my whole heart sink like a stone into my stomach when the door didn't budge. I didn't panic immediately, but after trying all 4 doors and cursing myself for a solid minute for being such an idiot, I spotted a man sitting on the steps of the community center eating, and he spotted me. Noticing my situation, he slowly stood and came to the back of my car with his bag of Raising Cane's chicken, plopped it down on the hood, and proceeded to enjoy his dinner on the back of my Subaru. I'd already been there for a good 10 minutes at this point, so honestly, the company of another person was actually relieving. I didn't look as helpless to passerbys with him there, at least that's what I thought. For context, I'm 5 feet tall and was wearing a tiny tank top to fend off the brutal New Orleans summer heat. After I explained my situation, he explained that he could try to jimmy rig the door open, and desperate to get back in, I agreed to this plan. It was useless, unfortunately, and I could tell that he was just fiddling around. I trotted over to a small church across the intersection, where I spotted a few people closing up for the night. Sanctuary, I thought. Nice churchgoers have to help a woman lost and alone, right? Wrong. The man locking up looked straight through me, back at the man now clearly trying to open a locked car, shook his head, and shot me a glance that said, "Do you think I'm stupid?" and stepped right into his unlocked vehicle. It was at this point that I felt the tears welling up, but quickly told myself to suck it up as I walked dejectedly back over to my car. By the grace of God, the random stranger let me use his phone to call a locksmith, one tastefully called Papa Lock, who told me that they'd be there anywhere between 45 minutes and 4 hours from now. Great. After about 25 minutes of chit-chatting, the man informed me that his shift was about to start, and just as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone. This is when the gravity of my situation really began to sink in, and I became acutely aware of my surroundings. Acutely aware of the men who had been circling the block on their bicycles during our conversation. I don't know about you, but I don't know many grown men who ride around leisurely on bikes after 10 p.m. just for the fun of it, especially not in the same big circles in the same neighborhood. I heard the distant squeak of wheels, and before I could duck for cover, they had lapped the block again, now aware that I was, in fact, utterly alone. They continued down the block, and I realized quickly that I needed to find somewhere to be by the time that they returned. I swiftly walked towards the community center, where I'd planned on sitting on the stairs. But I quickly realized that it was entirely too illuminated, and I'd be making myself a beacon amid the darkness of the neighborhood. Plus, as I rounded the corner, I saw a tall man standing in total darkness along the side of the building, simply staring straight forward, facing the steps, not even 10 feet away from them. Getting desperate now, I jogged over to the church, and hearing the wheels nearing again, I squatted down behind the big sign in front of the building. As I sat there in the dirt, I couldn't help it anymore, and cried just a little bit. The combination of fear and frustration really put me over the edge. After a while, though, I didn't hear any more movement, and because my butt hurt from sitting on the ground, and the bugs were starting to come out beneath me, I decided to move spots like some stupid game of hide and seek. I had spotted a fenced-off area that appeared to belong to a restaurant that had obviously closed by this time. And after finding the gate to the outdoor section to be unlocked, I darted inside and latched it behind me, sighing with relief. At that point, I situated myself at a table where I could peer through the fence at my car to see if the locksmith pulled up, and then I waited. I waited, and I waited. After about 2 hours, the horrifying realization dawned on me that I'd only made one singular call to the Popolok people, and I gave a vague description of the intersection where I was at. What if they couldn't find me? What if they had already driven past long ago, and not seeing me there, were long gone by now? I didn't know if I should keep waiting or venture back out in hopes of catching them if they were circling the block looking for my car. After about 30 minutes of indecision, I decided that I would just have to go out there. The men were gone, and although it was a bad neighborhood, it'd just get progressively worse come the early hours of the morning, and I didn't exactly want to find that out. It's so painfully obvious in retrospect, but of course, the moment I left the safety of my little restaurant hideaway, those damn wheels began to round the corner. I literally could not have looked more out of place and vulnerable. I felt so exposed, but there was no time to go back across the intersection to the fenced-off area, and to get to the church, I'd have to run right through the bike path of the two men. As I sprinted toward my car, a black truck rolled by and began to slowly roll back in my direction. I almost resigned myself to my seemingly inevitable capture, assault, and God knows what, as I watched that vehicle roll toward me. I pretended to walk away, as if I were not utterly aimless, trying to give off the impression that I wasn't locked out of my still-running car without any and all resources. The men on the bikes were so close now. But then, just as if out of a scene of a movie, the Popolok truck rounded the corner. I instantly began waving my arms to flag them down, and as that ominous truck drove off, my savior parked his van. Apparently, he'd been looping around the area for 20 minutes, trying to find me, and was about to give up to go help another stranded woman. If I had stayed behind the fence, he likely would have, and I would have been left without any means of communication to call anyone else for help. The moment I got inside my beloved Subaru, I began sobbing at the heavenly sound of the lock clicks behind me. God, it was pure relief to be secured within my own locked space. Even as I'm sharing this now, I feel as if I'm being rather dramatic, almost as if I was freaking out over nothing. But in working through my own recollection, parsing through the details, it does help to validate my experience. While I love animals, I don't anticipate being so haphazard if I come across a wayward pet again, and I certainly won't be getting out of the car without bringing my keys with me. Lesson learned. This happened back in 2015. I, a female, was about 20 years old at the time, and I'll give you some context before letting you know what actually happened. I was studying in a lovely seaside city in France, and everyone used bicycles as their main mode of transportation, cycling to work, school, parties, etc. It was a rather safe place, full of both tourists and students. I lived and studied in the city between 2012 and 2015. Up until the events that I'm going to mention, I never felt unsafe, nor did I hear anything of the sort from any of my friends either. In December of 2014, my boyfriend took me to his engineering school's Christmas party. We were amongst a large group of friends and mingled a lot. One of the guys from the group, one whom I didn't know personally, left the party without any notice. A month later, he was found dead in the harbor, and the police never figured out what had happened to him. I went online to check if there was any news, and it's still a cold case to this day. I didn't know him, but I think about this all the time. Was it because he was alone? Did he fall into the water, or did someone push him? Why didn't anyone care to walk home with him that night? Needless to say, the city started to feel a whole lot less safe afterwards. But at 20 years old, I didn't have the same understanding of such things as I do now, as a person well into my adulthood. My life just carried on. A couple of months passed, and it was the beginning of 2015. A friend of mine was assaulted badly while cycling back home after a party. He was found in critical condition, his body lying halfway on the road, half on the sidewalk. He had serious head trauma after it appeared that someone stomped his head while on the sidewalk. His jaw was completely shattered. This guy was a big guy in every sense of the word, not the sort of man that you could push around easily. When he was recovering in the hospital, he couldn't make sense of what had happened. He had no idea why he was attacked on his bike, and the police didn't find any suspect or suspects. Two students, my age, same friend circles, brutally assaulted for no reason at all. I still biked everywhere because I had no other choice. I lived about 8 kilometers away from my school, and I didn't have any other means of transportation. This meant that I cycled approximately 16 to 20 kilometers every day, something that I had been doing since 2012. We're now in the spring of 2015. I'm biking back home from a party with my boyfriend. I've had a few drinks, but I'm not drunk. I'm just tired, and my boyfriend is annoying me because he's not waiting up for me. The distance between our two bikes just keeps growing, when suddenly, someone jumps on me. This man appears from nowhere, and he kicks my bike to the ground. Now, I'm a skilled cyclist at this point. I'm used to handling my bike, so I let it fall between my legs. But I myself don't wreck into the asphalt. I resist and try to land on my feet. I don't know who this man is, but it's obvious that he doesn't have my best interests at heart. I instinctively reach for my bike, which is now lying on the ground. I'm trying to get a hold of the handlebars. This man kicks me, then my hand. He kicks again and again, but I'm already holding the handlebars. It hurts, but I'm doing my best to lift the bike. He says something that my brain can't quite make out. I don't hear it, but the sounds that he made were filled with hatred and anger. I see my boyfriend looking at me. He's a bit far off, but he stopped cycling. I figure that he's going to turn and help me, and this man will see that I'm not alone. I'm still standing and lifting my bike. It's been maybe 2 or 3 seconds since the man initially jumped on me. That's when my boyfriend and I catch eyes, and then he turns his back on me. My heart drops as he starts pedaling away. It's the dead of night, and there's no one else around. It clicks that I'm on my own now. The man just keeps kicking. He obviously wants me to let go of the bike. My hand is black and blue, but my grip is strong. I think about the other two students. They give me strength in the situation. I think about my boyfriend. The sight of him cycling away fills me with pure rage. I'll use this rage. The man is holding some sort of glass bottle in his hand. I grab it with my free hand and smash it into his face. I'm furious. I'm not sure what was in the bottle, but that's not important, because when it broke upon impact, it surely splintered into his eyes. Now I have a split second to launch myself and begin pedaling away. He can't reach my hand anymore, so he opts to kick my bike one more time. But I stand strong on the pedals. He tries to give chase, but I'm much faster, especially now that he doesn't have the element of surprise on his side. I pedal and pedal until I can no longer breathe. I pedal until I feel numb and finally reach my residence. That night, I know that I escaped something terrible. Due to the stress, I couldn't even describe the man. I'll never know for sure if my experience was linked to the other attacks. However, it's important to note, we were all walking and cycling on the same exact route. 10 years later, I can still recall the look on my ex-boyfriend's face when he turned his back on me. I can honestly say, I hope to never meet either of these two men again. I work at a retail store, and I absolutely detest my job with every ounce of my heart. And because I was dumb upon hire, doing my best to play team player, I said that I was always available, so they routinely stick me with night shifts. But I whine and bitch and moan and digress. I guess I'm okay working nights since I get to see my boyfriend when he picks me up afterwards. My boyfriend usually gets off of his job at 10:30, but oftentimes doesn't leave work until 11. So on those nights, I'd end up waiting for him for a good 40 to 45 minutes after I got off of work. He'd call me to tell me that he was coming, and also to make sure that I was still alive. Well, one random night, an Uber driver pulled up and asked me if I was someone named Lenore. I told him no, but his reply was, "Am I sure?" Bro, how am I not going to be sure of my own name? Fortunately, right at that instant, my boyfriend pulled in and gave me the honk, causing creepy Uber driver to speed away. I'm a paranoid penny, so this made me wonder if maybe that driver had been watching me and knew my boyfriend always came late. That was something that I pondered for a moment and then tried to put to the back of my head. But fast forward 3 days later, and I'm standing there after work in the parking lot of the shopping plaza where I work, listening to some music, waiting for boyfriend to come pick me up or give me a call with his ETA. He finally does call me, and he begins cracking a joke about how he's glad that creepy Uber driver didn't answer my phone. As we start shooting the shit and joking, that's when this woman of Indian descent walks up. I don't see her at first. In fact, I don't hear her either, as I was wearing noise-canceling headphones at the time. She gets closer and keeps calling to me, when finally she yells, "Hey!" I look over at her and smile, before going back to talking to my boyfriend. She does it again. That's when I excuse myself. "Hi, can I help you?" "Do you need a ride?" she asks. She looks nice enough, but something just didn't settle with me. Her car was parked at the stop sign, and there was clearly someone else in it. "Oh, no, my friend is coming for me, but thank you." I notice there's a man in the driver's seat of her car, and that she isn't wearing a uniform from either of the two shops that are near us. She begins to ask again, "Are you sure? I can give you a ride. Do you need a ride? Get in." I begin to feel a little uncomfortable at this, and my preschool don't get in a stranger's car training kicks right in. So I politely decline and go back to speaking to my boyfriend. "So, are you close?" He tells me that he just pulled out of his job, that he'll get there soon, and that I should just stay on the line with him. The last thing that he asks me is that woman gone yet? No, she wasn't gone. In fact, she was standing a mere 6 feet away, watching me, and she looked annoyed now. I told him in code that no, she's still there, leaning on the car, just watching me. And she's looking angrier and angrier with each passing second. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the man tell her something, and that's when she begins to interrogate me. Your friend's not here. Do you need that ride? Where's your friend? He probably forgot about you. That's okay. We'll give you a ride. It's cold. You should just get in. Tell us where you live. We can drop you off. At this point, she begins to inch closer to me. I try my best to avoid her by moving to the farther end of the plaza strip. Honey, yeah, so about my sister. Well, she's gotten closer, but I'm pretty scared. She's too far away from home. Something might happen. Hurry, so I can tell you. That's the code that I relay to my boyfriend as this woman's car drives up. Now she looks pissed. Get in the car now. We'll give you a ride. At this point, she opens the car door and begins trying to get me inside, pulling me, yanking on my jacket. She's a taller and bigger woman, so at this point she tries to pick me up. My bowels threaten to release, and I'm screaming, kicking, and wiggling. Meanwhile, I can hear my boyfriend yelling at me that he's coming and that he's calling the police. Now my mind is running 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm panicking, thinking I'm going to be assaulted or be some weird present for this woman's husband, since he looks rather content with her effort to kidnap me. Get in and shut up. You need a ride. Be quiet. You want to see our house? Very nice. I start crying as she manages to get my torso in the car. My right hand is locked on my phone, and she begins trying to take it from me. I can hear my boyfriend's panic through the phone, telling me that the police are sending an officer. This woman shoves my face into her leather seat. Now my airway is obstructed, and she's not letting me go. Like I said, she's bigger than me, stronger than me, and she knows it. Her entire weight is right on top of me. I try not to panic so I don't black out from lack of oxygen. And all of a sudden, I start getting mad as shit. Her husband says something in Punjabi as she lifts one hand up and leans down trying to get something from the front seat. I immediately take this opportunity to push myself off the seat and jab her in her stomach with my elbow. She recoils, letting go of me just a little bit, and I use this chance to headbutt her, tossing my big melon back as I scream, fear-stricken and adrenaline-hazed. That's my purse. I don't know you. Finally, my boyfriend pulls into the lot, able to see the last efforts of me trying to free myself from this woman. I leave her in a heap on the ground, obviously nursing her now busted nose. I bolt to his car, slam the door as I throw myself into the front seat, and he speeds off towards his house. Once we get there, I break down, babbling about how scared and terrifying this entire experience was. How, if I hadn't seized that opportunity, she might have gotten me in that car, only to do God knows what. After this incident, the police officer that had been dispatched got to the parking lot about 20 minutes after, and of course, didn't find a single person, although he did report finding a pool of blood where this encounter began. My boyfriend ultimately talked to his boss and was granted the ability to leave early on my behalf. I'm still weirded out by cars stalling in the plaza. I also don't know whether to be upset or proud of myself that my war cry was a line from King of the Hill. While I don't anticipate running into this Indian couple ever again, for anybody out there that might, if a woman with an Indian accent and a clearly disfigured nose ever approaches you and asks you if you'd like a ride, don't get in the car.